what it is, people. And I'm bringing y'all the truth behind Steve Austin's current beef with the WWE. Now, before I get into this, I'm well aware Austin, quote unquote, addressed the rumor about WWE going with Mick Foley to host a podcast with Shane McMahon, seeing how Mick never has done a podcast before. Now, whether this is the launch of his own official one, I can't tell. I don't know if that just happened to play into how everything worked out, but that's not what this is about. This is about Austin's beef with WWE. He can shoot any kind of rumor down he wants, and it might be some truth to him getting the shoulder surgery, which is an extensive shoulder surgery, as he said. I'm not saying it isn't. But dude, if you can't tell there's some type of a friction or some sort of tension between him and WWE, you guys are crazy. And even way before he addressed how WrestleMania 32 might be his last WrestleMania, this goes all the way back further than that. And this goes, to be honest, this really started back when WWE brought the podcast to the network. Now, it seemed like a good idea to bring the podcast to the network. I agree. What better, they had Austin there. It's a pretty popular podcast. But back when they got it on the network, it was extremely popular because it was just pretty much starting up and gaining traction and all that. So of course, WWE felt, since their biggest star was on a podcast, had their own podcast, why not bring it to the network? We do a hand-in-hand deal where it could be a live podcast along with being under the network. And it was cool at first, but here's where everything messed up. WWE wanted the podcast on the network. They wanted what got the podcast popular on the network. But here's where they messed up at. You can't have something for what people love it for, but don't want it done when you don't want it done for them same reasons. In other words, when they got the first episode with McMahon, this was probably the next week, I'll say. About the next week after the whole CM Punk walkout. So they would have been fools not to bring that up. And on top of them would have been fools not to bring it up, Austin brought it up. He did it in a cool, kind of respectful manner, where he asked, "Would you like for us to talk about it?" They spoke about it. Okay. Then turn around. And before I go further, a lot of people say that was the best podcast Austin did, which it was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. But then he had Triple H on. And that is where things started to go downhill. Not because the Triple H interview was bad, and not because Austin didn't like how the podcast turned out. It was when Austin asked about China. And that goes back to what I said at the just now in the beginning, where you can't have the podcast, which is a very open-ended form. You say whatever comes to mind. You speak on this, you speak on that. WWE loved that podcast for that being it, because when it got introduced to the network, it was quote-unquote tag words like uncensored, cutting edge, all this and all that. But then when he asked something that everybody been wanting to know about China, whether she would have been in the Hall of Fame, deserved to be in the Hall of Fame or not, they didn't like that. Now, granted, rest in peace to China. She did make it worse for herself after that was brought up, because she got back in the news by constantly bringing up WWE and this and that, and not to mention with the allegations of what Hunter did to her and stuff. That was a little crazy. That's something you never, that's whether it's true or not, I don't know. But that's not something you want to put back in the news if you're trying to get back in the good graces of a company. So along with that, and along with the reason Triple H gave as to why she might not be in the Hall of Fame, even though he feels she deserves it, and lo and behold, after she passes away, they say, yeah, she will be in. Well, we all know the reason why they didn't want to put her in was because they didn't want her to say nothing crazy on that stage. We know that's why. But they never could come out and admit that because they know it would have been a shitstorm. So, back to the Triple H podcast. That pretty much sealed the deal with that question because it started so much. Hunter was so uncomfortable with it. Of course, and I can't blame him for being that way. That was somebody he had a past relations with. It didn't end on the best terms. And on top of it not ending in the best terms, you have a very publicized relationship with the owner of the company. And the principal owner of the company is your father-in-law. So you got kids and all that, of course. However, with that said, he gave the answer for whatever he felt he had to give for that reason, okay? And then from there, with that happening, the whole pro wrestling tees issue happened, where WWE had some of Austin's shirts pulled from the pro wrestling tees store because I had the Austin 316 catchphrase, logo, and stuff like that. He got to keep all his Broken Skull Ranch shirts, but some of the other shirts with Austin on it got pulled, and that started a storm with WWE. So it just kept snowballing, and I'm gonna get to the pinnacle of it in a few. But that didn't help. They had a big legal battle where the shirts got pulled, and then they got put back up there, and then this and that. So Austin was gone for a little while. But lo and behold, WrestleMania 32 in Dallas was always coming up, and there was always talk of Austin being at 32 and doing something. And then along that line, he did the podcast with Lesnar. He did the podcast with Big Show, with Paige, Edge, and Christian. He did other podcasts also. But the Lesnar podcast also kinda wasn't, I don't even want to say wasn't a good idea, but at the end when they did the quote unquote setup for a match people thought it was, people in WWE felt Austin went into business for himself with that and all this and all that, when he was just giving entertaining television. That didn't go too good. So in between those times, we had the Jericho podcast come with Stephanie and Cena, respectively. And if you can't read between the lines why they got Jericho to do those, then you crazy. Because they know what type of questions. Austin was just being Austin on his podcast. He wasn't trying to be malicious or nothing. He was just asking questions, being Austin, like he does every podcast. So they put the kibosh on him doing those two interviews mysteriously, and they went with Jericho. Not to say Jericho will never be back, but come on, we know. So then we get to WrestleMania 32, right? It's in Dallas. Leading up on paper, it's supposed to be one of the biggest WrestleManias of all time. The hype went into it. This Mania was announced way before and the motions went into for the promotion way before the year. I said about a year and a half before it was talk of this Mania coming. Okay, so You had this whole time to do something with Austin. Was he gonna be in Shane McMahon's corner against The Undertaker? Was he gonna be a guest referee? Was he gonna be in Roman Reigns' corner? Was he gonna possibly wrestle a match? Nobody knew what was going on with Austin. I understand a lot of injuries switched around some of the Mania matches, but I don't know Austin forever being involved in anything set in stone. It was a lot of speculation. Was he going to be the referee for the Brock and Ambrose match? Was he going to be the referee for the Cell? Was he going to be the referee for the main event? They could have did any of those. They did the Beard Bash at 30, which was cool. I enjoyed that. I'm sorry, they did the Beard Bash at 31, excuse me. They did the Beard Bash at 31, sorry. They did the Beard Bash at 31, which was cool. 32, the next year, the biggest Mania, you had a chance to do something. What was they gonna do at WrestleMania? Lo and behold, you had you had Austin show up, right? Along with The Rock, who was there, Foley, Michaels, Cena, and a cast of other characters, which was cool. What they ended up going with, because we knew Mania was going to be a lot of people there, 32, the biggest one. What they ended up going with was Austin, Michaels, and Foley beating down the League of Nations and stunning New Day and some old throwaway middle of the card type thing, which nobody asked for. It was cool to see all them guys, but come on, y'all could have used them better than that. But what Rock did was he had the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, he had the flamethrower, he had the promo, he had the 6-second match with Eric Rowan, he had the thing with Cena at the end. Who was a surprise there? We knew Cena was gonna be there, but we didn't know in what capacity. So with that being said, Austin has been very vocal about this in past podcasts, saying they could have cut that deal short with The Rock and the flamethrower. Why would you feed Eric Rowan to Rock? How does that help Eric Rowan? Austin's been very vocal about this. And lo and behold, with him being very vocal about it, you're hearing rumors that he might be done with WrestleMania or WWE. Mysteriously. Nothing happened where he had a bad falling out with them that he says, but he'd just rather be done with them. If you look back at a lot of times when they used Austin, it wasn't in the best light. I remember he came back to hype up Taker and Lesnar. All he did was just introduce everybody in the beginning. Nothing more, nothing less. But when they bring Rock back, they do so much with The Rock. So much. Now, I know a lot of the younger generation might consider them on equal playing fields now, and they are. And back then, around when Austin left for the neck injury in 2000, Rock did take his spot. So when Austin came back, they was even. They was kind of even. But I look at it like this. Austin got WWE out that slump in 96, early 97, where everybody was running down south, where the guys who were supposed to stay and keep the ship afloat ran, when the Halls, the Nashes, Michaels left. When guys like that either ran down south or left for injury, or you had other guys who just didn't work out, like a Vader, the only guy stayed around was Austin and Taker. Other guys got elevated up, but the top guys that stayed, Hart ended up leaving. It was a lot of people that left, man. Austin and Taker, but Taker's kind of the cornerstone of it. You need Taker for the foundation, so I don't really put Taker. Undertaker has a weird position, and I'll address Taker's importance to WWE in another commentary. However, with The Rock and Austin got them out the slump in '97, going into 97 and 98, while Rock was on the rise, and Rock eventually got there. But in my opinion, it kind of felt like Austin Austin kind of got the ship up and running, and Rock came and took over and continued the smooth sailing of it. But the smooth sailing wouldn't have happened without someone starting the ship, which is why I feel personally Austin gets slighted a lot by WWE. Now, I don't know how he's behind the scenes. Maybe he's difficult to work with. I don't know. But I'm just calling it how I see it. With this whole Austin dynamic of him having a quote-unquote falling out that he says isn't with WWE, but it is. That whole Rock getting that big thing at Mania is the real reason why Austin's upset. I already know. That plays into it. And then on to him addressing with the podcast situation. He feels that he says that he has a very extensive shoulder injury and he can't do it, which is probably true. He probably can't. But I don't think that's the real reason, no. I think he decided. He said his shoulder was messed up in that little angle they did at Mania. So yeah, he wouldn't make that up. But I don't know. It's more that meets the eye, definitely. But with that being said, like, comment, subscribe. And don't tell them what you love. Tell them why you love pro wrestling. I see y'all. Peace.